Hey everybody, this one is called a republic, if you can keep it. And the question is if we can keep it. Do we still have a republic? I would say for most of us, no. Most of us are under a military dictatorship. Matter of fact, I'd say we all are. And some of us might get some semblance of freedom, but it's a military dictatorship. And so we're going to go through and analyze this a little bit. When he came out of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia asked Benjamin Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" With no hesitation, Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." And that's the question, if you can keep it. We have a full military dictatorship operating right now, and a few of us occasionally get some semblance of freedom, but these whores are selling people into slavery, and their evidence of it is everywhere. Bankruptcy equals martial law. My History of the Jesuits is not eloquently written. It is supported by unquestionable authorities and is very particular and very horrible. Their restoration, the Jesuits, in 1814 by the Pope, the Pimp, is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, and despotism and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is the Society of Ignatius. It is the Society of Loyola. And that's John Adams, second President of the United States. So, what we need to understand is what's martial law and what's a republic, and what are the differences. There are three kinds of martial law. There's full martial law. That's when a declaration of martial law is issued. Troops are put on the street. It's used only during wartime, used on a foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power or to put down an armed rebellion. There's martial law proper. It's the law of the armed forces. When a captain tells a private what to do, it's enforced by court-martials. And then there's martial law rule. It's the law of necessity and emergency. It allows the domestic use of martial law powers. It's used during times of peace and can be used for centuries during a military occupation. And that's taken from the U.S. Supreme Court ex parte Milligan. And it's cited in Diet versus Turner in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court. So what's a republic? Most people would say a republic is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But, at the end of the day, what does that really mean? What's the functionality of the whole thing? And what's not a republic? How can we tell the differences? Well, there's actually a lot of ways you can tell the differences. And the courts have actually, there's evidence of it all over the place. The United States, under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, says the United States shall guarantee to every state of this union a republican form of government. Well, they've been grossly derelict in that, quite frankly. And people need to start bringing that up. Is it a despotism or it's a republic? It's one or the two, okay? It's either a military dictatorship or it's a republic. And the military dictatorship, they call them democracies, okay? That's a military dictatorship. There's benevolent dictators and there's tyrants, okay? It's still a dictatorship, any way you want to look at it. This is Dred Scott versus Sanford, U.S. Supreme Court. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government, and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. So, again, a republic is not the law of nations. A republic is not international law. And a military dictatorship is international law. We're going to talk about that. So all of these courts are operating, all statutes are international law. All courts operate under international law. That's why they're bar members, folks. British accredited regency from the City of London. It's the bar. Congress is the problem, okay? Congress is doing this. Congress is the problem. We need to stretch their necks is what we need to do. The purpose of a Republican form of government is to shield we the people from international law. That's the purpose of it. It's supposed to shield the people. And the tyrants are everywhere. This is Chisholm versus Georgia, 1794. A state does not owe its origin to the government of the United States in the highest or any of its branches. It was in existence before. It derives its authority from the same pure and sacred source as itself, the voluntary and deliberate choice of the people. A state is altogether exempt from the jurisdiction of the courts of the United States or from any other exterior authority unless with special instances where the general government has power derived from the Constitution itself. The question to be determined is whether this state, so respectable and whose claims soar so high, is amenable to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the United States. That's the question. Is this state subject to the Supreme Court of the United States? This question, important in itself, will depend on others, more important still, and may perhaps be ultimately resolved into one. No less radical than this: do the people of the United States form a nation? By that law, the several states and governments spread over our globe are considered as forming a society, not a nation. So, in 1794, the Supreme Court said that there was no nations on this planet. It's all corporations. Okay, that's what a society is, a corporation. And then the question was, is the United States a nation? Okay? It's all corporations. So what's the UN? It's a gang of corporations where they go and assault each other and decide what they're going to do, make rules called international law. Okay? It's nothing but a bunch of thieves and pirates, and the sooner people figure this out, the better. Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. Two national governments exist to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. So we have a corporation here now too. Okay, it was set up in 1871. It's called the District of Columbia. Completely unconstitutional. But it's a military dictatorship. That's international law, folks. That's what they're doing. It's about time you started looking and seeing what's going on. That's what these whores in their court sit there and perjure their oath at the drop of a hat. In the Articles of Confederation, it says in Article 1, it says the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And yet, if you look in the U.S. passport, it says United States of America. A U.S. passport is a military document. It's martial law again. That's why they have to change it. It can't be the United States of America. That's the de jure entity. This United States of America is a bankrupt corporation, and it's engaged in treason and sedition. Passport defined. A passport is a written document given to a person or persons by a commander of belligerent forces authorizing him or them to travel unmolested within a district occupied by his troops. This is the Rules of Land Warfare, 1914 edition, Safe Conduct, Safeguards, and Cartels. Chapter 7, Section 4, Article 276, page 100. Passports are issued by the State Department or a similar office in other countries to diplomatic agents and others entering or traveling in foreign countries, which are the same general character as those issued during war. The latter should, when practicable, have a photograph of the bearer attached. So, it's only for government employees. That's why it says in their regulations it's only U.S. citizens. So, when you go and get one, you're saying you're a U.S. citizen. You're one of the government slaves. And all of these nations are under military dictatorships. And there is a silver certificate. Get a load of that. It says The United States of America. You look on Federal Reserve notes, they all say the same thing. The United States of America. At common law, only gold or silver were legal tender. That's God's money. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. If this is what you spend, even this, okay, that's not lawful money, okay? That says that you can go and get some lawful money. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of a discharge. Discharge falls under the law of nations, international law. This is all, that's when you use Federal Reserve notes, you're putting yourself under international law. That's what these bail priests insist on Federal Reserve notes. They insist on international law. They have no intention of honoring their oath of office. They intend to perjure their oath. They've intended it from the beginning. Before 1900, they used to hang judges on a regular basis, and it's about time we started again. It's a good thing this came up because now I can chill out a little bit. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Administrating-Your-Public-Servants and on my website. The groups at .io group got deleted because of censorship, by them. They didn't like the topics we were talking about. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Nowadays, documents, I'm putting them on my Google Drive, and I'm putting links to them below the videos. So you're going to have to go below the videos and find the link to the document, and you'll be able to download it. And that's where they're going. I've also got some documents on my website, but there's also I'm putting all the documents relative to the video on Google Drive and putting links below the videos. So there, all you have to do is go to the link. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. That's taken from the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. So then what that means is that Federal Reserve notes are meant for internal use of the government only. If you use them, then you're saying you're a government employee. You're discharging debt with limited liability. You're putting yourself under international law. You're nullifying your republic. You're not in a republic. If you use Federal Reserve notes, you're not in a republic. Fake money is military dictatorship. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They formed a part of the public debt of the United States. That's U.S. Supreme Court, Juilliard versus Greenman. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. A requirement for a promissory note is it has to have a promise to pay. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes, but they're still commercial paper. The United States acknowledge and protect in hostile countries occupied by them religion and morality, strictly private property, the persons of the inhabitants, especially those of women, and the sacredness of domestic relations. Oh, isn't that so nice? Oh, yeah, they're so nice. Offenses to the contrary shall be rigorously punished. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property or to levy forced loans. This is General Orders 100, and also known as the Libra Code, Article 37. It's a military dictatorship, folks. Federal Reserve notes are military script. In despotic governments, the government is usurped in a similar manner both upon the state and the people, hence all arbitrary doctrines, pretensions concerning the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable power of government. And each man is degraded from the prime rank which he ought to hold in human affairs, In the latter, the state as well as the man is degraded, and both degradations striking instances occur in history and politics and in common life. It's a military dictatorship, folks. It's a despotism. Trump is a tyrant. They're all tyrants. These governors are tyrants. Yes, Trump is a benevolent dictator. Matter of fact, I wouldn't call him a tyrant. Quite frankly, he's dealing with the tyranny and trying to put a stop to it. But it's not one guy can do it. One guy can't do it. Banknotes constitute a large and convenient part of the currency of our country, and by common consent serve the great extent to all purposes of coin. Okay, so you consent. When you use those banknotes, you agreed to it. In themselves, they're not money, for they're not legal tender, and yet they're good tender, unless specifically objected to as being notes merely and not money. They subserve the purpose of money in the ordinary business of life by the mutual consent, express or implied of the parties to a contract, and not by the binding force of any common usage, for the party to whom they may be tendered has an undoubted right to refuse accepting them as money. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Anything that can be used as a medium of exchange, or anything can be used as a medium of exchange, as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in this state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that's United States versus United Mine Workers, 1947. U.S. Supreme Court. Banks are international law. A military despotism is international law. Uniform Commercial Code is international law. All codes, rules, and regulations are international law. Law of nations is an interchangeable phrase with international law. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. That sounds like a military dictatorship, folks. National supremacy. Military dictatorship. They form part of the public debt of the United States. During the Civil War, they paid government employees with treasury notes. Government employees were forced to loan the government money. When the government employees were paid treasury notes or bank notes, it's a forced loan. Both are government debts. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military despotism. It makes it so the courts presume you do not pay a debt. It makes everybody into paupers, and paupers have no rights except to what they allow you to have. It's a military dictatorship. That's why those bar member whores sitting up in the front of these so-called courts are wearing their military uniform, that black robe. That's a military uniform. According to Norm Franz, and I think he's right, gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, barter is the money of peasants, debt is the money of slaves. The Federal Reserve was set up under the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. The simple, most important requirement for a Republican form of government is the single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Federal Reserve notes are fake money. All of the stimulus will be paid to anyone with a Social Security number in the form of Federal Reserve notes. And this is Title V, United States Code, Section 552, AA 13. The term federal personnel means individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits. That means anybody with a Social Security number is a government employee. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes. Lawful money is not bank notes. Lawful money is not forced loans. Lawful money does not discharge debts. Lawful money, I should say, lawful money it does not discharge debts. Lawful money is not international law, and lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes again. Can't say that enough. COVID-19 pandemic and hyperinflation. If we do get hyperinflation, the cities will absolutely be the worst place to be because of the lockdown. Farmers are destroying milk and other crops because restaurants are closed. There have been major crop failures in the last 3 years in a row. It's a recipe for food prices to go up a lot. It's a recipe for hyperinflation and major shortages. So a little comparison about gold and silver. Gold and silver can be counterfeited. It's not infinitely divisible. There's no authenticity verification. Storage, it can be lost or stolen. It's portable, but not necessarily. It's recognized, but not necessarily accepted. Taxes, yes and no. Anonymity, yes. Federal Reserve notes can be counterfeited. It's not infinitely divisible. There's no authenticity verification. Storage, it can be lost or stolen. It's portable, yes. It's recognized anywhere. Taxes, yes. Anonymity, maybe. Some banks require IDs for any cash deposits. Transactions over certain limits precipitate reporting requirements. Cryptocurrencies cannot be counterfeited if it's a mined one. Is infinitely divisible. Authenticity verification is completed when used. Cannot be stolen from a wallet, but it can be lost. If you lose your key, then it's gone. Portable, yes, completely portable. It's recognized and it's growing. The recognition is growing, and there's no taxes. Well, there's always a fee. Anytime you use it, there's a fee. And so, you know, some of them have a high fee and some have a low fee. Bitcoin has a high fee, and Litecoin or Digibyte have low fees. Anonymity, yes, some more than others, okay? Some of them, they can look at the address where the transaction, IP address is, and kind of get an idea on where you're at and start building a case if they really want to. Some of them are completely anonymous. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button. And all of that is really, really appreciated for all you guys to do that, to like my videos, because it helps with the censorship. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments and subscribing. Even though I'm sure that YouTube is not notifying all my subscribers. Some of them have said they're not getting notifications. Anyways, this is the front page of my channel. I've got the subscribe button's normally red. It's been clicked. The bell has not been clicked, and the arrow's pointing at the bell. Once it clicked, the little menu comes up where you can be notified of all uploads or whatever. Okay, so please click the bell so you can get notified. Mining cryptocurrency, mined cryptocurrency is talking about a blockchain. A blockchain is essentially a distributed ledger. The public key, there's a public key and a private key for every wallet. The public key is in the blockchain, and the private key, so the public key, it's easily accessible, but the private key is completely private. So everybody can see the public key, and they can send cryptos to it. The private key is your key, and that's how you keep people from taking anything out of it. Blockchain is a public key and an amount. That's all it is. It's just a public key and an amount. So every transaction is recorded in the blockchain. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International on Facebook is being deleted, although I haven't been there in ages. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Follow me on BitChute at Sovereignty International. And my Patreon is Sovereignty International, and I also have a MeWe group, and I got a few files uploaded there as well. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety under circumstances of creating emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. So that's what everything, when you're under military dictatorship, that's why they have to pass literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. That's why there's no common law, and that's why we need to end this military dictatorship. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. They have to pass statutes for murder or assault. Those are common law offenses. And we can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Heller to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Tyrant versus Turner. There's no common law in the United States as distinguished from individual states and courts of the United States. Instead of administering common law or any particular system, conform to law of states where they are situated. And that's 1855 case. Well, after the Civil War, it all changed. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command are crimes. The problem is Congress, okay? That's where the problem rests. We need to stretch their necks, every last one of them. Well, you know, maybe Rand Paul, you know, I don't know. But we need to stretch their necks. Same thing in Texas or any other states. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. That means you're under a military dictatorship. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Under a military dictatorship, there's no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and assault. It creates civil law, which creates a democracy. Under a military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law. That's why they have literally millions of codes, rules, and if you don't know about some obscure code, rule, or regulation, they assault you and sell you into slavery. They're nothing but the lowest form of life there is. We need to stretch their necks. It's about time we started stretching their necks. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. Now, I am not a liar. Well, I meant an attorney. Well, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. So, the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. So I need other people being on point, understanding what's going on, and being on point. And if you want to buy a subscription as a donation, it's a modest donation, there's no doubt about it. But every little bit helps, and a whole bunch of people chipping in a little bit adds up to be a lot. And so it's all appreciated. Some of the exclusive content and Patreon content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training. There's actually 3 videos for that. Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration Training, Criminal Complaint Training. There's probably about 3 videos on that. Lawsuit Training, there's 1 video, there'll be more. Other training, Northeast Private Information Share videos, all forms, files, and other instructions are available for free. They're now on, it's not on my private groups anymore. I have them on my, under the video. Okay, there's links to the files under the video, the recent videos. And there's also, my website has a bunch of files. All exclusive content will be on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. And my Patreon is Sovereignty International. So military dictatorship is the democracy. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think that's an accident? The mark of the beast. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had a mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And so that's Revelations 13:16-18. Some people say that Bitcoin is the mark of the beast, or will become the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast could be related to cryptocurrencies. I think the mark of the beast has more to do with the Social Security number, a vaccination record that Bill Gates talks about. They're talking about forced vaccinations. If you don't have proof of vaccination, then you can't enter into any government buildings. It's not a big leap from government buildings to commercial buildings like stores and malls. And and they'll put that on the chip, right? So it's more than money. And I think it's a whole bunch of things. Check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves playlists, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 to 5, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through I think it's 19 now. Canada Border Pigs playlist, bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. And so it all started, well, that we know about, okay? It all started with the concessions of England to the Pope in 1213, the bar members, okay? Bar members are foreign agents of the Roman cult. And this is concessions to the Pope, 1213, concessions of England. They agreed to pay tribute to the Roman cult. We will establish perpetual obligation, and concession will establish that proper to special revenues or our aforesaid kingdoms, and for all the service and customs which we ought to render for them, saving in all things the penny of St. Peter, the Roman Church will receive yearly 1,000 marks sterling, namely at the feast of St. Michael 500 marks, and at Easter 500 marks. And 700 for England and 300 for Ireland. So they had 2 kingdoms, England and Ireland, and this is tribute. After the concessions of England to the Pope in 1213 was signed, King John had to make money to pay his tribute. King John imposed martial law rule and started to do things to raise money to pay his tribute. It took only 2 years for the people to figure out what was happening, and the Magna Carta was the result. This is a Canadian court case. Quebec, actually. Perlman versus Pichet, an Attorney General of Canada, found at 4 Dominion Law Reports 147. The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between 2 legitimate independent sovereignties, nor between 2 nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between 2 nations, in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. Okay? So that's exactly, they stuck a sword to his throat, and they said, "Here, king, we want you to sign this." And here's some sections of the Magna Carta. You don't think they were raising money? And the city of London shall have its ancient liberties and free customs, as well as by land and by water. Furthermore, we decree and grant that all other cities, boroughs, towns, and ports shall have their liberties and free customs. They were charging people to go into the cities. No village or individual shall be compelled to make bridges at riverbanks except those who are of old legally bound to do so. They were compelling people to build bridges. It's all about the money. It's always all about the money. No sheriff, constable, coroners, or others of our bailiff shall hold pleas of our crown. What do you think that pig does on the side of the road when they stop you? No constable or other bailiff of ours shall take corn or other provisions from anyone without immediately tendering money therefor, unless he can have postponement thereof by permission. They were stealing people's corn. or other provisions. No sheriff or bailiff of ours or other person shall take the horses or carts of any freeman for transport duty. They were forcing people to, they were stealing their property, their carts and horses, or making them take them somewhere. It's all about the money. Neither we nor our bailiffs shall take for our castles or any other work of ours wood. They were stealing people's wood. No bailiff for the future shall upon his own unsupported complaint put anyone to his law. What do you think that pig does on the side of the road? To no one will we sell, to no one will we refuse delay, right, or justice. They do that, these whores do that every day, thousands of times in the so-called courts. A bankruptcy and military occupation after the concessions to the Pope precipitated the Magna Carta. A bankruptcy and military occupation in colonial days precipitated the War of Independence. That's what caused the War of Independence. This is the Carolina Charter, 1663. Yielding and paying yearly to us, our heirs and successors, for the same the yearly rent of 20 marks of lawful money of England at the Feast of All Saints yearly, forever, the first payment thereof to begin and to be made on the Feast of All Saints, which shall be in the year of our Lord 1665. And also the fourth part of all gold and silver ore, with it, which within the limits aforesaid shall be from the time to time happen to be found. So, and get a load of this. Oh, I didn't put the Carolina Charter here? Oh, I guess I didn't. The Carolina Charter went from coast to coast. Causes and necessities for taking up arms. 1775. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and the exercise of the law martial. It was a military dictatorship. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. It's a military dictatorship. And it's here again. Martial law is really no law at all. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. That's why they passed literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. That's civil law. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. There's evil in this land, and you are letting it happen. We're all going to be held accountable for the evil that's in this land. And it's going to have to be redeemed by the shedding of blood. I can tell you that. Before we get some blessings back on this land, it's going to have to be redeemed by the shedding of blood. And 2 years after the War of Independence, you don't think it was about money? This is George III, chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the War of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman, that from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose. So it was always about money. And here it is again, folks. Taxes caused the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. If they can take anything, they can take it all. You're forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. Felonies mean nothing. They go and pass these edicts under martial law saying it's a felony to violate somebody's rights under martial law, and then they refuse to enforce it. Tax and impost, a tribute imposed on the subject, and excise, a tallage, and public law. Taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. It's a tribute. The subject, so if you're paying taxes, you are a slave, okay? You're a subject. A subject is something that's owned by the government. They can do anything they want to you. Declaration of Rights, 1776. And provided further that nothing herein contained shall affect the titles or possessions of individuals holding or claiming under the laws heretofore in force, or grants heretofore made by the late King George II or his predecessors, or the late Lord Proprietors, or any of them. So they set up the next bankruptcy. The treaty with the King and the 13 colonies of the United States of North America, signed at Versailles, July 16, 1782. Article 1, it's agreed and certified that the sums advanced by His Majesty to Congress of the United States under the title of a loan in the years 1778, 1779, 1780, 1781, and the present 1782, amount to the sum of 18 million livres, money of France, according to the following 21 receipts of the above-mentioned underwritten Minister of Congress, given in virtue of his full powers, to wit. That's taken from source Treaties and Other International Acts of the United States of America, edited by Hunter Miller, Volume 2, Documents 1 through 40, 1776 to 1818, U.S. Government Printing Office, 1931. And here is the receipts. 28th of February, $750,000. 19th of May, 1778, $750,000. There's in 1778 it was $3 million. In 1779 it was $1 million. In 1780 it was $4 million, taken from the same document. And in 1781 it was $4 million, and in 1782 it was $6 million. Amounting to the whole of $18 million, by which receipts the said minister is promised in the name of Congress on behalf of the 13 United States to cause to be paid and reimbursed to the Royal Treasury of His Majesty on the 1st of January 1788 at the house of his Grand Banker in Paris, the said sum 18 millions, money of France, with interest at 5% per annum. And the courts went along with it. In Tyrant versus Taylor, it stated that the dissolution of the regal government no more destroyed the rights of the church to possess and enjoy the property which belonged to it than it did the right of any other corporation or individual to his or its own property. In the latter case, the Chief Justice, in reference to the corporation of the college, observes that it is too clear to require the support of the argument that all contracts and rights respecting property remained unchanged by the Revolution, and the same sentiment was enforced more at length by the other judge who noticed this point in the cause. And that's the Society and etc. versus the Town of New Haven, U.S. Supreme Court case. Oh, and get a load of this. France went and financed the War of Independence. Well, guess who was the King of France? It having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent King George III, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland. So King George financed both sides of the War of Independence. And get a load of some of these other titles. Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire and the United States of America. So when U.S. declared independence, the tyrant was still Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the United States of America, the upper and lowercase, the not the United States of America talked about in the Articles of Confederation, the unconstitutional corporation. It's agreed that the creditors on each side shall meet with no lawful impediment to the recovery of the full value in sterling money of all bona fide debts heretofore contracted, and there shall be a firm and perpetual peace. Well, that was a lie. The King of France and England, King George the Tyrant, was the King of France and England. He financed both sides of the War of Independence. The United States owed France 18 million livres from the war, And the tyrant was arch-treasurer and prince-elector of the Holy Roman Empire and the United States of America. Queen Elizabeth, that bitch, is now the arch-treasurer and prince-elector of the Holy Roman Empire and the United States of America. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. On Christmas Eve, 24th of December, 1913, in the middle of the night, Congress, that's where the problem lies, folks. Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, setting up the scenario for the next bankruptcy. In less than 20 years, the Federal Reserve's banksters set up the next bankruptcy. 24th of December, 1913. This is, within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's Archbishop James E. Quigley, the Roman Catholic Archbishop, May 5th, 1903, in the Chicago Daily Tribune. So, what? December 24th, 1913? Since March 9th, 1933, the United States has been a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And that's taken from the U.S. Senate Report number 93-549, dated November 19, 1973. Oh, and look at this, United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993. It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session June 5, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. It's Congress that is the problem, folks. And there's the pimp in Congress. The Roman Conquest, 24th of September, 2015. U.S. Congress is the Roman cult. And what's this red text here say? It's kind of hard to read here, so we'll go to here. Let's go back. This one right here is pointing at this staff right here with the eagle on top of it. Eagle's a symbol of the Roman cult, by the way. Roman Achaea military staff carried in battle by all Roman commands planted on all conquered nations. That's what that is, a Roman Achaea military staff. And what's this one say? This is pointing at Biden. Devout Roman Catholic honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton University honorary degree. So he didn't work for it. And what's this? Pointing to these right here. Roman bundle of rods bound to a weapon symbolizing subservient under the rule of a single man. There's the tyrant right there, the Jesuit right there. So what's this one now? Pointing at Boner. Okay, in 2015 it was Boner or Beaner or whatever his name is. Devout Roman Catholic trained by Jesuits installed the first Jesuit chaplain to the house. And there's a Jesuit right there. Remember what John Adams said about the Jesuits. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present day, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. It is the accepted rule, not only state courts, but the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of civil statutes, mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Statutes are international law. Statutes are edicts under martial law. Mere statutes, okay? It's all military dictatorship, folks. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It doesn't mean anything. They just go ahead and they screen out their pigs for low intelligence because they just want them to follow orders. And so they have order followers. They got millions of them. Where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the days from the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And so what I'm saying is that they send these low intelligence pigs out to assault you. That's exactly what they intend to do. Okay, it's time that you started waking up to what's going on, and this has to be put a stop to. There's evil in the land. So they're not competent to receive judicial power. Their judgments are void. It's all a kangaroo court. So again, there's no courts. These all are just nothing but a bought and paid for whores. They're in bad behavior. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. It's not a court. It's an administrative proceeding. They're selling you into slavery. They're nothing but bought and paid for whores. Judge works for the state. Prosecutor works for the state. The pig works for the state. The vast majority of disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the pigs, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. And we need to start fucking stretching their necks is what we need to do. Section 1. This is the current so-called 13th Amendment. Military dictatorship. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. So they go and sell you into slavery in their kangaroo court. And he, the prisoner, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. They sell you into slavery. That's how they're populating the prisons. There's more people in prison in this country than any other country on the planet. These people are Satanists, and they should be put to death. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, maketh merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among us. Well, folks, there is evil here. It is evil as evil can be. It's diabolically evil, and we need to put an end to it, or we are going to be held accountable. And that's the end. Thanks for watching. The Republic is dead. And we need to put a stop to this evil here, folks. The Republic is dead, and we need to put a stop. Yes, some people get something resembling justice, but the Republic is dead. The Republic is dead.